Big up Spurs fans near and far with your boy Deji Spurs and your boy Arthur. Just so you know, me and Arthur have not communicated since the last stream, partly because of authenticity. Just kidding. But really and truly, we've just been busy, so we haven't had a chance. But after last week, literally as the news was breaking, the first thing that Arthur wrote was he's bereft. Do you get what I'm saying? You know, like when you're using English, when you're using the English language and your first word is bereft of what to say, you know it is hitting deep. So Arthur was like, no, we got to have a conversation today. So we are going to, Arthur, I think we need to first of all get into it because the last time we spoke, we were talking about the highs of the Europa League. We were talking about whether that was enough to keep Ange, and you were very much talking about this is an opportunity for the process. Let me just put out there, bro.
Yeah.
After we won that Europa League,
I
have been on cloud 2000. I am happy. I am gassed. I have the appetite. I want more in the location. And then I'm not even going to lie to you. As much as I was initially like Ange out, part of me was like, if they had said Ange in, I probably would have been cool with it because one thing I like is I like people who back their talk. I don't like fraudsters. I don't like people who waffle or you say you're going to do something and you don't do it.
Yeah.
Postecoglou won in his second season. He said that was what he was going to do. So I'm not going to lie to you. I was slightly intrigued at what season 3 might look like. And actually, when we were kind of messing each other, what I wanted to ask you, and maybe that should be the first question, is what do you think season 3 would have looked like under Ange? And I think that would be my first question, legit, before we go into the aftermath.
I think, I think...
Well, you can go with how you feel, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that, I think it would have been, I think we'd have massively improved in the league. I think we'd be competing in the top 5 in the league.
Yeah.
And I think we could be like FA Cup finalists. So every chance of like an FA Cup. And we'll get to the knockout stages of the Champions League, like quarters or something. And I think that would have been like a real sort of cement of the idea that we're a serious club, that we're a serious team. That what happened this season just gone was quite extreme decisions taken in extreme circumstances. Like it's quite an extreme thing to make the decision in January to put everything in to the Europa League. Yeah, he assessed. If he is to be believed, and I believe him because I feel like he's been one of the most honest managers we've had in recent times. It's one of the reasons why he's probably stayed in his job as long as he has, because he speaks so well. He does connect well with people, and he seems authentic. And I think like I believe him when he says that he assessed the squad in January, and he assessed that for us to compete anywhere in the league in the top 4 or 5 was just going to be impossible with all the injuries we had, with the fact that we didn't really strengthen in January. We got 2 players, Danso and Tell, and they arrived really late in the window. And he just looked at it and he assessed what any of us would have assessed and known in our hearts, which was we were not going to compete in the league with all those injuries. And so he went for after one thing, and he fucking got it. And I just think we can't take anything away from that. Like I completely understand. I genuinely understand people who think that he should have been sacked. I genuinely get it. Like it's an emotional thing, and I think that's one of the things that I've loved so much about Postecoglou. Regardless, is that my emotional connection to my club is like maximum. It has been completely maximum. I mean, it's been depressing. It's been difficult, but I've been all in a way that I just was not when we were with Conte or Mourinho or that little spell with Nuno. I just I've not had that feeling since Pochettino, and I loved it. And he brought that. And I think in reality, the thing that has stopped us from being successful in the past isn't quality players. Like we've had quality players, like really great players on our books. It's a mentality thing. It's something cultural in the club. It's some kind of assumption that we're going to fail. It's some kind of assumption that we're going to try really hard, but never quite get over the line. And he just came in and just blew that up. He blew it up, and he did what he needed to do.
Can I just stop you there? Did he blow it up? And the reason why I asked that question, I did a show called "Is Postecoglou a madman or is he a genius?" And I was using like Frankenstein and Einstein as the kind of, the kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of joke.
Yeah.
The thing is, and I think the facts remain, and I think you kind of said it, and I'm looking at Neil's comment, 22 Lionheart's comment in the chat, is had we lost that game, yeah, I get it, we won, it's great, we got it over the line. The only other time where a gamble like that was done for me was Mourinho. He did it with United when he won the Europa League as well, funny enough, same competition. But he was about second in the Prem then, I think. But had he lost, bro, that would have been, that's a disaster. Like, look, we can say today he did it, he said what he was going to do, but really you have
but Des, this is a philosophical question, man, because he didn't fucking lose. Like that's not reality. Like the real thing is that he made some decisions and they were successful. Like that's reality. Of course he could have lost. We could have slipped up against Bodo. We could have not done, not had a clean sheet against Frankfurt away. Like there were so many points at which we could, and obviously if the game had gone differently, if we hadn't scored in the first half, we would have played differently in the second half. Like there are so many factors, and the only thing that we can actually assess is what actually happened, which is that we won. And for me, that is, I wanted to continue the vibes on that. I wanted to go, okay, right, you said you would do this one thing, and fucking hell, you did it in a weird way and kind of surprisingly. And yes, you sacrificed the league, but you did this thing you said. Now you're saying we're going to be better in the league. Now you're saying we're going to compete in the league. Let's see if you can do that. Yeah. Like that to me seemed obvious because I felt like the players were completely with him. And that's something we never heard, that they were players were down in tools or turning on him. And that's a huge thing, especially with so many young players that go to the club solely because they've had a chat with Ange. So I think we'll get on to Thomas Frank and
we're going to get onto that.
Loads of attributes and all of that, but I just think in the context of the here and now, it felt to me like that was an adventure I wanted to kind of go on. And obviously, I don't know the outcome. Like, who does? Yeah. I just wanted to see it.
And legitly, I agree with you because part of me is like I said, if you can do that, could you do this? I actually think the nail in the coffin was the Brighton game.
Yeah.
Hear me out. Because one of the issues I think for Postecoglou has been is it's felt like there's been a reason for everything. And the reasons have turned into, it's gone from reasons to sounding like excuses. Now, hear me out, my logic, why I think it was the Brighton game. So for me, I was like, we've just won the Europa League. We've been dusty all season, but we've been dusty because we've been focusing on the cup. Rightly so. And if that is what you decided in Jan, then you're a legend for doing that. Yeah. But for me, I was saying, I want to see a performance from the lads against Brighton because one, we are at home. It's the last game of the season. You've just won the Europa League. Brighton are giving us a guard of honor. What a party it would have been had Spurs won 4-1 themselves. Because then you could argue that now that the dust has settled, we've now gone back to the Prem. We've got a big win against Brighton. Maybe season 3 might look good. But what happened was we went back to the Prem and we got whacked.
Yeah, but Des, what happened?
I know what you're saying.
I was at that game. I was at that game, and like the most logical assessment of that game was that we played well in the first half, which we did, and then we were shattered in the second half. You were talking about Brennan Johnson played 90 minutes. You saw that guy. He was pissed. He was pissed on Friday night.
Yeah.
I hadn't had any sleep. We'd been dancing up and down the high road. Like, I get it. Like, I get that it would have been better if this happened. It would be better if that happened. But at the same time, like, there was no way that we were going to have the energy to compete against Brighton for 90 minutes when they had something to play for. And we competed for as long as we had the energy for, and actually played some decent football in the first half. And then we just the obvious happened. And the feeling in the stadium was one of celebration, because the reality is that we knew at that point that the league was fuck all to us at that point. It had been fuck all to us. The league had been a way to manage minutes for players in the Europa League so that we could win a trophy and get into the Champions League next year. And that's what he did. And I think that's the only thing that we can really assess. I don't know, obviously, because I'm not like any insider or anything, but it wouldn't have surprised me if Postecoglou already knew that he was out of a job. It wouldn't have surprised me if that decision was made ages ago, and that he was informed of it either before the final or after the final, but that actually was it wasn't going to go any further. That wouldn't have surprised me. And then the agreement that is announced when the dust has settled and all the emotion can be had and everyone can enjoy it or whatever, that wouldn't surprise me at all, because that felt like what the club was going to do. And it felt unlikely that a club, the way that is run under Levy, the way it's always been run, which is on his version of logic rather than any sense of kind of emotion, he wasn't going to change his mind based on one game.
Can I ask you a question then? So I have my own logic, similar to maybe what we've heard. What do you think was the main reason why Spurs did it? Yeah, forget the statement. Statements are statements. You can read, you can see past statements. Why did Levy pull the trigger? Because you're right. He did what, if you asked me at the beginning of the season, I was saying to people, I want Champions League football and I want a trophy, and I don't give a damn how I get it done. Obviously, I didn't expect it to be done in this way. My own personal logic, Arthur, is that Levy looked at the situation and thought, since the Chelsea game, where I actually support Ange on that, a lot of Tottenham fans think he was a madman playing 9 men and attacking Chelsea.
I loved it. I was there, man. It was great.
I think it was Braveheart and it was Shakespearean. Yeah, it almost felt like it was better to have loved than lost than to have never 100%. Loved it all. You know what I'm saying?
There's a whole new sense of connection with that team and that night that was built from that.
I loved it. But I did think, though, since then, our form had been pretty win one, lose one, win one, lose one, win one, lose one, that kind of thing. Yeah. Gone into this season, the whole season was pretty much like that. I think we only had like 4 draws or something stupid.
Yeah.
So I felt that Levy was thinking next season's got to be a season where, like you said, we should be in the top 5 and trying to pick up a trophy.
Yeah.
And what we couldn't afford was to find ourselves end of October, 6, 7, 8 games in without a win. And that's probably why they decided to pull the trigger. So but I don't know. That's my own personal theory, because I don't think, like, Levy's risk adverse. He knows the fan base will quickly turn, and I actually think maybe, on reflection, was it a good thing for Postecoglou in the sense that he gets to leave Spurs with his head held high? He gets to leave as a legend, rather than if it was to take a turn for the worse at the beginning of next season, people will be cussing him and booting him out, and they would have even forgot about the trophy he won. Whereas now, he's like, we love you, Ange, come back anytime.
Yeah, but at the same time, if we know anything about Ange, that's not how he would think, because he would struggle for the first few games of next season. He wouldn't think that. He'd think that with decent pre-season, with the growth of the young players from last season, with a guaranteed investment of a couple of experienced players to complement the young players, he would think that we could hit the ground running next season. That would be his mentality. A stronger squad, a more experienced squad, not the same injuries, like working the whole medical department, which they were doing anyway during the season, because clearly they were having issues with players getting injured as soon as they came back. And I would have just, like, he wouldn't think like that. So, and quite uniquely, and I think positively, he's one of the few managers who's really honest about the fact that he wanted to continue managing our club. There was no kind of, oh, I don't want to talk about that. We'll talk about that at the end of the season. He was like, this is my players. I want to see them grow. I want to see them progress. I want to push them. I want them to be hungry to repeat this again and again and again. And I want to do that. And I know that I can take this club there. He was so honest about that, knowing that means he can't down the line, put out a statement by mutual consent we decide to part ways. Because his ego, he doesn't have that sort of ego. He's not a Conte or Mourinho. He's not thinking about himself like that. He's just going, this is what I can do. Okay, if you don't want me, you don't want me. I'll be fine, mate. That's obviously he'll be fine. He's actually pissed in the face of everyone who said, you can't go manage. You can't make that jump from Japan and to Scotland and then from Scotland to the Premier League. He's just gone and won something with Tottenham. We haven't won a European Cup for 41 years or anything for 17 or anything decent for more than that.
Yeah.
And he'll be able to go anywhere. He'll be absolutely fine. And I'm sure, hopefully, not sure, but touch wood, Tottenham will be fine as well. It's not so much about me thinking that I'm right that we should have kept hold of Ange. I just wanted us to. I get the arguments. I just wanted to see it out. I wanted to see what would happen. I didn't have any kind of extra knowledge to suggest it would be any more successful than anyone else thought it would be. But I just wanted to experience it.
And to be fair, I kind of agree and say it, Arthur, because what I found quite surprising, and I don't know why I was surprised, but I'm guessing you were surprised and you're about to answer this, is the outpour from the players on social media. I don't think I've seen anything quite like it. The players genuinely were gutted that this man had left. And so it made me, when we were reading reports that there might be a little bit of a ruckus inside the dressing room, it made me feel like, bloody hell, have we done the right thing? Maybe the lads clearly are. I mean, Son, Basuma, Pedro Porro, Richarlison, all of them saying, you backed me when I shouldn't have been backed. You had faith in me. And I did think, what a man. And actually, those guys probably would have. But I did also think, you guys are saying this, but there is a part of me that feels like they let him down. And is that a bit of guilt from the players?
Yeah, I never feel like it's that simplistic, man. I have no idea what it's like to be an elite athlete, let alone an elite Premier League footballer. But I watched the games and I knew the facts of all the injuries we had and all the lack of training and how numbers were down in training, and it was clear that there was just a lot of young players being asked to perform in positions that they're not used to and progress quicker than they were ready to.
Yeah.
And the end result in that was that we lost a lot of games. I just think the players really liked him because he did back them. And the players liked him because they went and won something. They were the first squad of Tottenham to win something. And some of them were 18 years old.
Yeah.
We had kids that contributed in the Europa League by scoring goals, and really young players playing so many minutes. And he got them that. And so any of those players, especially the young ones who are this is their first big club, this is their first big manager, that's just so important. And that's his man management, and I think for me, that was the thing that is missing at Tottenham since Pochettino is the real man management where players, they're not playing your way out of fear. They're not the way Conte would just scare the shit out of the players if they didn't do what he wanted them to do.
Yeah.
That's not very sustainable.
Yeah. Well, look, big up Eugene in the chat, and Eugene, let me know, man, you're wanting to pass through. I see Eugene.
Absolutely, Romero and Maddison did have shocking games. Absolutely, and there were loads of players that need to be held accountable, especially the senior players. And there were players that didn't play at their level this season, but that was indicative of the whole team. But that was also in that there was context to that, and of course it could have been better. But I think what our manager was saying was that in order for it to be better in the league, we probably wouldn't have won the Europa League. And I think that's the thing. Would we have settled for 10th in the Premier League and no Europa League, or what we've actually experienced? No, I definitely take what we've got now.
I think I no, 100%. I take what we got now. But for me, I've always seen our club as a massive club, a big six club, and the one thing I will say before we move on to talk about Thomas Frank and how we feel about that, and big up to Eugene that's going to be joining us in a second. This was the first time as a Spurs fan that I actually genuinely felt a little bit vulnerable. Now, I'm not saying vulnerability is necessarily a negative thing. Sometimes vulnerability brings out the best in one. But every season, I have looked forward to the Champions League. Like, legit. I don't give a damn. I think, let's bring in Barcelona. Let's bring in Madrid. Let's bring in PSG. And I found myself thinking after the Europa League with our team, and especially after that Brighton game, like, I would rather just do the Europa League again. Now, I don't know if that's me being a bit of a wimp, but I did feel like, yeah, what is the point? And I don't know if it's because people have always said to me, what is the point being in the competition if you're not going to win? And I'm like, the point is you're there. The point is you're at the World Cup and you can go to win, lose or draw.
Yeah.
But I did feel for a moment like, would there be any point in us with our current squad going into the Champions League next season, given how we look? And I just felt like I felt like I didn't want it. And that for me was a feeling I didn't like. I'm not justifying it. I'm just being honest and saying what I felt. What say you on that? And then Eugene, and then we'll talk about Thomas Frank.
What I say on that, hey Eugene, how you doing, man? I think I get it, but I think also, we're not going to stand still as a squad. This is not going to be there's no way that we can afford, or that Levy can afford, for this transfer window to be a window where we don't buy anyone. So our squad's going to change. Like, it would have changed under Postecoglou. It's going to change under seemingly probably Thomas Frank. Like, there's going to be change. So we're not going to be standing still. And the point of being in competitions is because you're in competitions. Like, you don't choose not to be in one because your odds are slim. You go in there and you learn something about yourself as a team. You learn something about your football. Your manager will learn something about his team, and you just compete and you see how far it gets you. And then you make assessments as the season goes along based on the draw you're getting, how you're performing in these games, whether or not the energy should be put more heavily in one competition or another, if you need to do that, if your squad is struggling or you're getting injuries. Like, all of that just becomes a bit of a malleable thing. So, I would much rather be in the Champions League than the Europa League. And the truth is, we've earned it. Like, whatever people say about our league position or whatever, when you start the Europa League, that the prize at the end of it is winning the Champions League. It's not a surprise. Yeah. Like, that's the fucking prize. So, you win it, you earn it. That's what the prize is, and that's it. And I think we have an opportunity to play. You don't know who you're going to draw. It's an interesting format. We've not played the Champions League in this new format, so we don't have to play. We're not going to get Real Madrid twice. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about it. All that can happen is that we lose. Like, it's not as if we're not used to losing.
I've just got this kind of matter-of-fact attitude tonight. I'm just like, all right, cool, I get you, but it is what it is. Fair. Eugene, your thoughts, because you've been in the chat and you actually said something. You said, no, let's not answer that question yet. But your thoughts, really, your final kind of reflections. Did you sense the same vulnerabilities? Arthur said, like, whether he's here or not doesn't really matter, mate. We just go and we do what we do. But I did genuinely feel concerned. Not to say I thought we were going to win, but I did feel like we are at the weakest juncture that I've seen, and hence why I probably felt the way that I felt. But what say you on the issue?
I mean, we talked about it, Edge, and Arthur, when Ange was sacked, I thought of you. I'm like, is Arthur okay? I was, I was concerned. And look, I was actually really sad. And because I do like Ange as a person, as a man, I like what he stands for. I like his philosophy. And to be honest, I wouldn't be against him having another season. But it's just, I think both the board and the players let him down. And when I heard the statement from the board, I was fuming. They have some nerve saying that they expect us to compete on all fronts when they cut the wage bill and Solanke was the only player for the starting 11. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's shocking. And the players, Romero and Madison and like all the senior players, they've let him down again and again. There are some
Mm.
shocking games from Romero, like the Wolves game where he was responsible for 3 goals, Arsenal game. Like there were, I mean, Romero was out for what 30% of the games, 40% of the games. Every
Mm.
single season he's out, and then few games he just down tools. So
Mm.
it's all great when Madison, is posting about Ange, but when it's time for him to perform, most often than not, he doesn't, and they
Mm.
don't. So on one hand, I know that Ange had to play Archie Gray, Ben Davis, and Kingsley, for what, like 13 games, which is shocking. And our front three is a relegation quality front three.
Mm.
So the board can't say that they backed him and we need to compete on all fronts. That's laughable. But then the players, on the other hand, can't talk much because they let him down.
Well, this is
But
the
at the
classic.
same time,
Yeah.
Ange also, there is no reason for, well, he made a lot of mistakes with the Europa squad when he didn't include Spence. There is no reason why he couldn't adapt in the league like he did in Europa. So there are issues everywhere with Ange, with the board, with the players. So
Yeah.
even though I'm sad that Ange is going, that he was sacked, given the way we do business and given how we back managers, just I think for Ange, as Deji said, this was the best time for him to go. Because honestly, I think next season things would go downhill, and this is his drop of the mic moment. He's like, you know what? I won you guys a trophy. He got his payday. He's gonna get
Mhm.
a new job. He'll be fine. Um, just the way his system is, he needs top players in every position to overwhelm that position. And the way we do business, that's never gonna happen. So I just feel like even though I'm sad for him, just given his philosophy, I just didn't think it's gonna work. I mean,
Mm.
would he change his ways next season? Possibly, but it's a risk either way. So
Yeah,
Mm.
fair, fair. Look, I think that's a really fair comment. And Ange is gone now. And Ange, we salute you. Thank you for the greatest summer I've had in a long time. The parade, the jumping up and down, the big chest. You haven't seen me streaming because nobody wants to stream with me, little fraudsters. But don't you worry, the cooking fest will happen before the Super Cup. So I got a question to ask, and Eugene kicked it off in the chat. He said this: Ant had to go, but underwhelmed by Frank. I actually felt when the announcement was made, it couldn't be Thomas Frank because I felt like that was a sideward step for me. Like, why would you sack Ange for Thomas Frank? That don't make no sense. Like, that's crap. So I thought it was fake news, and that more so Tottenham was secretly trying to bring in Xavi, who I think would quell the fan base. But it looks like today, with Fabrizio Romano and the stuff he's saying, Thomas Frank is probably going to be announced as Spurs manager tomorrow. And I'm going to ask you both, because both of you have football knowledge. And big up to everyone that's locked in, locked on. Thank you. Make sure you smash the like, but also give us your thoughts as well. Oh, I'm going to start with you, bro. Your thoughts on Thomas Frank. I know you're hurting, but we've got to move on. All right. Thomas Frank, our club.
Okay. So I think, let's start off by answering what the difference between why Ange to him. Okay, so the one thing that I think, something I think is a real positive about Frank is his man management. Like, All his players love him. Players talk about, it's all that stuff that you hear people talk about what people liked about Ange. They'd run through walls for him. They love playing for him. They listen to him. They feel connected to him. He's a communicator. He's another emotionally intelligent communicator. And that makes total sense because no one is questioning whether or not Ange was good at that. Like no one is questioning how he connected with the players, how they worked so hard for him, how he changed the culture in the club. That's only been commented on as positive, and clearly it's positive. Yeah. So it would make sense that you bring in someone that can continue that sort of open dialogue, emotionally intelligent, good with the media, expresses themselves well. That to me is a huge thing, because if you're going to take over a dressing room that seemingly might be a bit despondent about losing Ange, because the word is that they are. If you're going to walk in, you need to be someone who has the emotional intelligence enough to allow those players to, without sounding too extreme, to grieve whatever they need to grieve, to get out of their bones the fact that the loss of their talisman, of the guy that they love. And you have to have a manager that doesn't have the ego that stops them from allowing and acknowledging that they are coming and taking charge of a group of players who really loved their previous manager. And someone like Thomas Frank completely has that. Like, no doubt. I'd have no doubt that he would go in and he would manage brilliantly all those players that are wavering, especially those young players like Archie Gray or Lucas Bergvall, who clearly had a huge connection with Ange because he's their sole reason for their massive breakthrough at professional football at this level. So I think that's a brilliant thing, and I think that's rare, and I don't really know of any other manager that is available that I know of any intimate knowledge about that has that, and that is a huge thing. So that would be the biggest positive, I would say. I think the second thing is he works well in the football structure that the club are clearly trying to build, which I feel like is similar to the structure that they have at Brentford and Brighton, which is essentially a club that purchases players and builds a squad at a technical level for a manager and a system, but not, and a manager will have to say, okay, a player, but essentially players are bought for longevity and managers won't be there for the full journey of that player. So there's a club purchase, and if a manager moves on, then you can insert a new manager into the structure. That's clearly what we're trying to do. He works well with that because he's used to that. He improves players. He improves the number of players that's still at that Brentford squad that came up from the Championship and have been competing at this level and almost got European football last season. He improves players. That's something that a lot of people have said Ange didn't, and I think that's a reasonable comment around Ange, whatever the context. But that's something that Thomas Frank does, and we've got young players to improve. He's used to working in a structure that we work in, which is that we like to buy players under 23. We hope that we're going to buy some big experience this summer, but we know as a club that's what we do, and he works well with that structure. So I think all those things are really positive. Like putting aside my feelings around Ange, this doesn't change how I feel like we should have kept on Ange, but we moved on. In my mind, in terms of what's available with the knowledge, obviously he doesn't have Champions League football, European football experience, but who do we have out there that's available that has that to success? At a club like Spurs, it's a whole different ball game. So he's going to have to learn as he goes along, but he seems really smart. So that doesn't seem like it's going to overwhelm him. I think it makes sense to me. He's a bit more adaptable. Like he adapts his sides to the teams that you're playing. He's a bit more flexible with that. He's adapted his systems. He doesn't mind changing the way that we play, the way that his teams play. So he's more pragmatic in that sense, but he still likes playing attacking football. So for me, I'm finding it hard to get excited about moving on from Ange. But if we were going to go for anyone, I would say that I'm quite positive about Frank.
Cool. Eugene. I mean, yeah. So you're quietly positive. So that's cool. That's basically what I'm asking you, Eugene. You said you were underwhelmed.
Well, look, there, first the positives. So as Arthur said, you cannot argue that Frank is a very good coach, right? That he's very good in developing players. He's excellent in working under a tight budget, right? There is no arguments there.
No.
My concerns are that there are many excellent coaches out there who struggle to make a jump up
Yeah.
to manage a, I mean, we're not a big team, but we want to be a big
Okay.
team.
Oh, yeah.
But we are, right?
We're a big
To
deal. Yeah,
manage
we're
a
a big
team
deal.
with our aspirations, with what the board wants, with what the fan want, it's a different ball game. You don't just coach players, you deal with player egos. There's a
Yeah.
different type of player that comes. There's different weight of expectations, as we saw with Potter. And I mean, there are countless other examples. I cannot, other than Pochettino and how, I don't remember any other manager who successfully made that step up. So for me, a concern is that yes, he's a great coach or a good coach, but does he have all the other soft skills and other intangibles that will make him succeed managing a team with top four aspirations?
Hmm.
Also, he's never competed on all fronts, and if that's what the board wants, it's also a different ball game.
Mm.
Hmm.
Also, in Brentford, yes, he improves players, but Brentford, their recruiting setup is excellent.
Mm.
He gets players that have a lot of potential who he can coach. If you look at our setup, it's
That's correct.
shambles.
Yeah.
So the question is, did he develop those players in Brentford, or were those players or did those players have really good potential that he could take and mold into, who they became
Yeah.
right now? And is he going to be as successful with who we're bringing in? I'm not sure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What also concerns me a bit that hiring of Frank, it sends a signal from the board about how they'll be operating in the future, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's going to be a youth project. We're going to give you more young players,
It's
coach
gonna
them
get
up,
bad,
and
isn't
we'll
it?
see
Yeah.
what we can do.
Yeah.
Versus if they bring in a win now manager, that would signal that we might potentially go and get some top players and compete.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, again, like people were saying that Ange is a yes man, this whole term makes no sense, but Frank fits that mold. He's not
Yeah.
gonna go and cause issues with Levy and with the board. He'll be happy to be here, and he'll accept the players that the board are going to give him.
Yeah.
So is that good for us to build the foundation that we need to move forward? Sure, perhaps. However, if we're saying that this is the sliding doors moment, we have
Yeah.
Champions League, starting from scratch and going with this youth movement while we're in Champions League, while we need to make a move and show that we're going to compete, I'm not sure if that's the right move. So I'm underwhelmed. I mean, personally, Glasner was the guy for me since he's proven it in Germany. He won the Europa. He won with Palace. He's a proven winner. That's what I wanted. Xavi was never coming here. He used to working with Yamal, Pedri, and Gavi, and here he has Brennan Johnson and Bissouma. So I mean,
Yeah.
that would never happen. But I just wanted a proven winner that would signal to me that this board is serious about competing. And
Yeah.
with Frank, I'm just not sure what the plan is. I mean, I think I know what the plan is, and I'm not happy with it. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I mean, I hear you. I have a number of thoughts. I always criticize people for being Humpty Dumpty, who sat on the wall and then stayed on the wall. But unfortunately, I'm gonna have to do that tonight. So I tell you what I think. On a personal level, I was kind of underwhelmed. I'd see Tottenham as a big club. So I expect big names personally because I want to be challenging for Champions League. I want to be challenging for trophies. And Thomas Frank felt like you said, we're gonna go and get these unknowns. Yeah. Now at Brentford, you can go and bring in a Wissa unknown. You can bring in an Ollie Watkins unknown. You can bring in an Ivan Toney unknown, and it works. Tottenham doesn't have that great scouting structure to kind of bring in those players. However, there is one thing I did consider that no one's talked about yet. which is this. And someone said it in the chat. Our squad is capable of 5th or 6th in the Prem. Hear me out. If we can get Udogie back to his best in season 1 under Ange, Udogie should be the best left back in the country. Van der Ven, one of the best centre backs in the country. Romero, one of the best centre backs in the country, World Cup winner. And Pedro Porro was improving and improving. Can Thomas Frank get the best out of Basuma? I've been speaking to Brighton fans who say that Basuma at his best at Brighton was better than Caicedo at his best at Brighton. So we've got a Caicedo-esque, because, you know, Chelsea fans are wax lyrical about Caicedo this season. Then Basuma, by Brighton standards, have said Basuma is actually better than Caicedo. We've got Bentancur, who was on a trajectory to being world class. We've got Kulusevski, who could be potentially world class. Madders, if he can stay fit, is on form, is a madman. Solanke, who's got potential. And then you're thinking, actually, if you can get a manager that can bring out the best in these players, this squad ain't so bad. It's only because they were so poor last season that I was talking about, for in order for Tottenham to be able to do anything this season, we would need 6 or 7 new players, the Ezes, the Semenyos, the Adam Waltons of this world, the Andersons, the Robertsons. But actually, there is a point of maybe Thomas Frank comes in, fixes, or, you know, squeezes every last juice out of the players that we got, a bit like what Iriola did at Bournemouth, a bit like what Marco Silva did at Fulham. And then maybe things don't look so bleak. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. Could that also be?
But Des, I think the thing is that you just named, you know, 7 or 8 players that are really good or potentially really good, and you probably needed to have named about 60. Do you know what I mean? Like, beyond those players, we're relying on inexperience or youngsters. Like, we don't have a squad. We didn't have the squad last year to be able. Even if we hadn't have had half the injuries we had, that wasn't a squad that was going to really succeed in the Premier League. So we need to build the squad. And I think, like, obviously we're making assumptions about Thomas Frank, but he is just existing in a framework that is required of him in whatever environment he's been in. You know, to think that he would come to Spurs with the different parameters, which is exactly the reason why he would come to Spurs, is because it's a club with different parameters, different expectations, different potential, a different requirement of his managerial skills, because that's what you want. You want people to go and test themselves, people to go and prove themselves. That's you want that drive from. He believes he can do that. And I think, like, he's not coming to the club to be repeating his Brentford. He's coming to the club to be making his Tottenham. So he's going to have, you know, we're going to go after the players at the club's profile of the players. It's not the manager's profile of the players, it's the club's profile. We'd have identified already the areas of the squad that we are aiming to improve. That would have happened already, because that's Johan Lange, that's all those people. So, and also Johan Lange and Thomas Frank know each other and worked together before and all that kind of stuff. So I think, obviously, the assumption that, and they're reasonable questions and potential doubts, but I think we're going to have those questions about anyone. And, you know, regardless of what they have. And that, I don't feel like there's any reason to think that Thomas Frank can't help identify and okay very good quality players whilst improving the players that we have at the club.
Yeah.
Look,
you've got to make a step up at some point, and you can only do it by giving people an opportunity. He seems smart. He doesn't seem like someone who's going to be overwhelmed by it. Like, he seems pretty chill. He seems pretty Scandi about the whole thing. Makes sense.
Look, Dej, based on what you said, it depends what your expectations and what your aspirations as a club are, right? If the fans and the club will be happy finishing 5th or 6th, cool. Like, Frank can stabilize the club probably and say, okay, we're not going to be 17th. We can finish with who we have, 5th, 6th, 7th. Again, our players, I think we're overrating our players a bit, but they're not as bad as they were last season. That's fine. So we can finish 6th. But personally, I don't want to be a Brentford. Like, I want to
Yeah.
have aspirations for a manager and a board to show ambition and to say, you know what, even if we're not going to win anything for the next 2 3 years, I want to see a plan where in 5 years, like City in the very beginning, or in 5 years, we can reach that level where we can compete not for the League Cup once every 15 years, but for big trophies. So is Frank that guy for me? I'm not sure. Again, he's a good coach. He can stabilize the club, but I don't want to be a mid-table team or a mid-table club. And I'm not happy if we're gonna, finish sixth this season and fifth next season. And so that's my issue. I just want to see some ambition. And based on just that hire, it's a safe hire. I would rather club take another risk
Yeah.
and be, you know what, if we fail, we fail, but at least we're swinging for the fences
Yeah.
versus, it's going to be a safe hire, and we're going to keep finishing sixth every season. I don't want that. That's my issue.
Fair. Fair. So look, I guess, Thomas Frank, it looks like we've been linked with a number of players. It looks like we're linked with Semenyo, and then that makes me think, is there a twist in the tail? Could Iriola be coming in? Blah, blah, blah. I guess for me, the last question I want to ask both of you is, what now? And the reason why I say what now is it felt like we had learnt our lesson under Conte and Mourinho. We wanted to go back to the good old ways of Spurs. I don't think we are going back to our way of football because Thomas Frank isn't really as good as he is and as pragmatic as Thomas Frank is. He's not really a Tottenham type manager in terms of style of play. We play gun-ho football. We play attractive football. I don't know. I just your thoughts on that and whether and really from what you can see, your knowledge, and I know no one has a crystal ball, but could we be surprised by Thomas Frank? Could he take us back to where we should be? Because for me right now, I asked the question before. I said who was a better manager, Pochettino or Postecoglou? And I said for me it was Poch. I know he won under Ange, but I still love Poch. Could Frank do a better job than Poch? I guess is the question I'm asking. Arthur.
Yeah. Like Willie, there were just external factors. Will he get backed by the financially? By
Have we lost Arthur? Oh no.
So looks like it.
Eugene, do you want to tackle that question while we wait for Arthur? Yeah.
I mean,
I'm back.
Right, he's back.
back.
Sorry. Yeah.
Go for it.
Go on, Arthur.
So, yeah. There's will he get backed by the club? And by backed, I just mean with stuff that he wants, not what we think he should have. It's the same thing, when people said, oh, they were upset with certain business, and it turned out that was the business the manager wanted. There were some reports recently about how David Pleat said that when he was at the club, when Pochettino was there, that season when we didn't buy any players, the summer we didn't buy any players. Apparently, it was Pochettino's decision that he didn't want to add to the squad. That's what David Pleat said. So there's a whole host of things that happen behind the scenes that we don't know why it happens. But I think if he gets backed and it fits in his structure, I think he could do. He could be. If of any other manager available, make me feel more confident, more or less confident. I think it's good that we've got someone with Premier League experience. I think it's good he's got a good relationship with players, understands the Premier League. He does play attractive football, and he has played attractive football. And I think a lot of people have commented on how a big aspect of going to Spurs is it gives him the opportunity to more consistently play the football he wants, rather than have to be so reactive to other teams, because we will be hopefully dominating matches in a way that Brentford were more reacting to matches. And that's obviously a sort of football that he wants to play. And that will be a test, because, you know, we don't really know what that looks like for him. So I think all of that is quite exciting. I don't think we're going to see Brentford Thomas Frank. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. We're going to see Tottenham's Thomas Frank. It's going to be different. His resources are different. His expectations are different. He's come here to do something different. If he does come here, obviously. So I think that can be exciting. I think that that's something that is so hard to predict, because it will so obviously be different to what people saw at Brentford. It really will be. He's got a whole different squad. So I'm excited about that, and I think he could do something interesting. I don't think there's any reason why he won't. And I think, you know, pre-season and the first 10 games of the season are going to be really, really important and interesting to see what he's doing.
Yeah, brilliant. And Eugene, just following up on that, 2 minutes, if you don't mind, I just want to get that comment from, I don't know why we still call for managers being backed when we have 20 plus years of seeing the opposite, what fans expect. For us to succeed, we need a manager that works with what he has, like Poch did, which I think is what Frank can do. But yeah, Eugene, could he be a success at Spurs?
I mean, I agree with Arthur. Like, I am, I guess, excited to see what he can do, just based on what everybody said, and, you know, watching videos on him. He's very adaptable. He's changing things all the time. So, you know, us playing back 3 or back 5 with Udogie or Porro being wing backs, which fits them, or, you know, maybe playing Johnson in a different position. It's just issue with Ange was sometimes he put the square pegs into round holes, and I think Frank, he might do a better job maximizing what we have. So from that perspective, I'm excited to see what he can do. My issue is that I just don't think our players are good enough to compete on multiple fronts, and that's not really up to Frank, right?
Mhm.
Oh, and, you know, since you mentioned Pochettino, there is a difference between, you know, a better manager and a more successful manager, right? So Pochettino, again, great coach, did very well developing players, but in the big moments, he bottled it. In the finals, he made the wrong calls. So when I say that some managers just can't make that step or make that leap, Pochettino is an example. And Frank, I'm hoping he's different. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm just tired of us giving managers chances to prove themselves versus hiring a ready-made manager. Obviously, with Conte and Jose, it didn't work. But so again, like, I'm not going to waffle, but, you know, I agree. Tactically, I think we'll see an improvement. I'm excited. I just don't know player-wise if we're good enough. So this transfer window is going to be interesting. Who we bring in? If we don't bring anybody else other than a loan or two and a kid or two, then it's going to be clear that we're in full-on youth movement. If we bring in 2 or 3 starters, if we bring in a wing number 6 and a center back, then I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe there is some ambition. And if given the tools, Frank might do something, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. And big up to everyone that's locked in, locked on. Make sure you smash a like. Arthur, thank you very much. Eugene, thank you very much. We are preparing for Thomas Frank. It might be, yeah, look, it seems like it's a sensible, safe appointment. And if it means that we get Bremo over the Piccadilly team, then I will hold that. Yeah, no, I'm joking. We're not ready to offer those wages. But we will see. Hopefully, we're going to probably have an announcement probably by Wednesday this week. But until then, thank you, everyone. Smash a like, and we are out.